Today's episode of the Mind Sculptors podcast is sponsored by TCG Player, your source for all your trading card game needs. Use our link in the description the next time you get your cards to help support the show. Today's episode is also made possible by our Patreon subscribers. If you want to support the show directly, head over to patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors and you can become part of the SCULPTY family today. Or if you don't want to do any of that, leave a like and comment on YouTube or a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as an offering to algorithm Jesus.
Welcome, everybody, to the Mind Sculptors podcast. I'm Cal.
And I am Ian.
Welcome back. I know that, for everybody who is listening, there was no, breakage in release. But for us, it's been 2 weeks since we've recorded anything.
And hopefully today goes long enough that there's another 2 weeks. We're busy.
Yeah, so just a bit of a life update. I just moved from Louisville to Cincinnati, so I am now finally a Ohio citizen again.
You have returned to bucking the eye.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be so fucking obnoxious this football season. You are not ready for it. But yeah, so we made that move. My wife finished up her PhD, and so it's just been crazy hectic in my neck of the woods. And then you have just been going to every Galaxy Con imaginable.
Yeah, in a row. I did Cowtown, the Colorado 5K. I have 2 Galaxy Cons in a row, and then followed by Gen Con.
Yeah.
And
you leave tomorrow for this other Galaxy Con.
Yes, yes.
We are sneaking this set review in. So,
yep.
Strap in, folks, because it's going to be a wacky ride.
If you thought we were punchy last time, buckle the... No, we can't. It's a set review. We gotta get our ish together for sure.
Yeah. Although I will say, I do. There were some people who on Twitter asked, because they saw that I had moved, asked for a Lime Scooter update in the Cincinnati region. I gotta say, so far, it's been pretty clear.
Yeah. Haven't
seen any. However, I still need to venture around the arena district a little bit more, 'cause I think that's where they like to hide.
Yeah.
They like to hang out by football stadiums and baseball stadiums and shit.
Conversely, being in Colorado and then Columbus 2 weekends in a row, I saw so many Lime Scooters. I saw so many, and they were everywhere
there, dude.
Not only did I see a bunch of Lime Scooters, but also everyone I was with the whole time also pointed out every Lime Scooter that I saw. So, the podcast has reached, we'll say.
I gotta say, I appreciate that there has been a successful embracing of the Lime Scooter meme.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. By the way, last week's episode, a lot of people in the comments were really vibing with an Arden Thras deck, which is the first time that our audience has really wrapped their arms around an Arden. Yeah. So that was exciting. So I'm actually probably going to put a little bit more work into that, because that was a list that I just was like, wow, this kind of feels.
You made Cal feel seen, and that's really something.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. But yeah, so we're here to do a Bloomburrow set review. This set is it's the furry set. And I mean, am I incorrect?
No, but that's the energy we're starting with.
You know what? It is a upgrade in my book over the energy we came into last week, right?
Yeah, that's
because last week we could just come full swing. I know it's been 2 weeks, but
Yeah,
hashtag
we
Fiona
can beat
loves
around the
Shrek,
book.
right?
Yeah, beat around the bush.
We could
about
really
the fact
go
that it's
for
a
it,
free
but
set.
yeah. So we've got all the characters are animals set, and we're going to start off here with some of the potential commanders from this set. And starting us off here is Gev Scaled Scorch. It is a 3/2 why can I not say this? Lizard
mercenary.
Yeah, I don't know why I was having a hard time saying that. And Gek has ward, and its ward cost is pay 2 life. And it says other creatures you control enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each opponent who lost life this turn. And whenever you cast a lizard spell, Gev Scaled Scorch deals 1 damage to target opponent. And it also costs a singular black and a singular red to cast. I don't remember if I said that or not. But so this is a pretty coolio card.
Mm-hmm.
I know this card's got you all hot and bothered, Ian.
I can't handle you this episode. I don't know.
It's very funny because like about 5 minutes ago before we hit record, I'm just like, yeah, dude, whatever. I don't fucking care. Like, whatever, shoot. And then we hit record. It's like, hey, everybody.
Yeah. Now apparently I'm all hot and bothered over a little lizard.
I mean, you were telling me this makes you want to download Arena again. So like you are into this.
Yeah. So I mean, yes, there is also just like Rakdos lizard aggro in standard, and like that makes me want to experience that joy in my life, because that is exactly the kind of stupid nonsense. Like,
because you deserve that.
Yeah, I think lizard aggro is the funniest thing in the entire world, and the fact that I can be like, yeah, lizard aggro is my standard deck is it's just a powerful sentence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it really resonates deeply.
It really does resonate with me, and I'll probably quit standard as soon as the deck's bad. But like in that small window where I can play lizard aggro, and there may be people in the comments who tell me that it probably won't be good enough, and if that's the case, then for sure I'll be sad again. But for a cEDH specifically, this is sort of like continuing this theme that we've been getting lately of like 2 mana or less or more like Rakdos legends that do something hyper niche, but also can just be a Nas deck if we really need them to. And the sort of TLDR here for this one is like, yes, it's the weird lizard outlet, right? I don't know that that's the most relevant part of this card, but it's not irrelevant either, right? So that's definitely something to potentially keep an eye out for. But it's that middle ability that says like the creatures come in with like a 1/1 counter on them for each opponent who lost life this turn, right? So TLDR is if you hit one opponent in your turn with anything, right? You can then immediately turn on persist creatures so that they do not die, because the 1/1 counters and the -1 counters will then cancel each other out, right?
Yep.
Like it's back in 2013. But like a sack outlet and a murderous red cap plus your commander is just GG's, or any of the common popper goblins that we were seeing in like the popper format, right? So like any of those and a goblin bombardment or an altar and stuff like that, right? Just
right.
That's the game. Opens up a few more weird combos. As I said, haven't done too much diving on whether you can loop a lizard over and over again. I don't think that's a thing, but I'm open to being surprised.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lizard, but I think at minimum, I mean, I'm sure there's like some value lizards that you can play, right? Like there's gotta be, but yeah, like at minimum, like it seems like we're getting this trend, and I know you brought this up of like these weird, I don't know how to describe them totally, like
just niche, I think.
Yeah, very niche Rakdos commanders that are filling very specific roles and are doing it in very narrow colors of doing things like you said, like a thing that you would generally associate with like green. Right?
Yeah.
You're getting in Rakdos, and so we're kind of seeing an expansion of the color pie in that, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Also, like worst case scenario, like you ping each of your opponents for 1 in a combat, which if anyone's played against Ob, they know how easy that is. And that's just suddenly like all the creatures you have in your hand are coming down with 3/1/1 counters, which is like not how CEDH games are won, but it's not how
it's not the worst.
Yeah, like I've heard of worse grind plans. Like having
Right.
like all of your dorky 1/1s come down as 4/4s is like not a bad stat line, right?
Yeah, it's not a bad place to be if that is where you are at going, in the game. But we will see how that goes. Moving on over to Kitsa, Otterball Elite. Kitsa is a 1/3 otter wizard that costs a generic and a blue, has vigilance and prowess, and has 2 different activated abilities. One, you tap it, draw a card, then discard a card. The other, you pay 2 generic and tap it, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy, and you could only activate if Kitsa's power is 3 or greater. So this is one that in our group chat Phoenix is all worked up over. So what are your thoughts on this? This is a cool little design. Very mono blue type of thing.
It is very mono blue for sure, right? So like on a base level, it itself is a dramatic reversal outlet, right?
Right.
So if its power is 3, which this is one of those commanders that we're gonna say like this is how you break it. I'm not gonna go into details on the exact cards that are gonna break it because that is up to someone else.
I don't know exactly the full 99, but I know a general idea of what's gonna do it.
Yeah. And then as you set up a dramatic reversal thing, and then eventually if you can get more of those, it can then move through your deck. It's like a whole thing. If you get some other things that copy it as well, right? So setting up your own dramatic reversal or being an outlet for the normal dramatic reversal combo is like just pretty solid, right? I've definitely heard of worse things. It also synergizes really well with a certain flash otter that we will be talking about later. And the 2 of them together is like just basically make your own Jeskai Ascendancy.
build your own Jeskai Ascendancy.
In mono blue, and like that's pretty sweet. So like worst case scenario with this commander, absolute worst case, it's like a JVP, right? And then just kind of gets better from there.
It's like a JVP that like stays on the board a little bit better, if that makes sense, because I think one of the criticisms and issues with JVP is that it's very limited in when it can how often it can do it, and then if it flips you're kind of stuck in the situation where it is 100%. Now a planeswalker and very squishy. So I think that is one of the benefits here. I do think this might be more appealing in the 99 of a Jeskai Ascendancy style deck for that redundancy. That is something I've been trying to talk Phoenix into doing like a Jeskai Ascendancy deck with this also in the 99, but as a commander, I think I don't know how many times I can say it, but hey, look, it's a high tide commander. It does that. I don't know if that's what you want to be doing in the year of our Lord 2024, but it's pretty good. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. It also seems perfect.
Very favorable interaction with like time warps, right? Like in mono blue.
Yeah, for sure. So we will see how that develops over time. Next card on our list here is Baylen, the Haymaker. This is a 4/3 rabbit warrior that costs a red, a green, and a white. Has 3 different activated abilities. The first one, you tap 2 untapped tokens you control. Then you can add 1 mana of any color. The second one, you tap 3 untapped tokens you control to draw a card. And the final one, you tap 4 untapped tokens you control to put 3 +1/+1 counters on Baylen, the Haymaker. It gains trample until end of turn. So this is a card that you have described as the best Naya commander, like full send, right? Like
it feels pretty like that. Yeah. I'm like pretty sure it's the best Naya commander ever printed. The fact that this sort of solves because one of the biggest ironies or sort of contradictions with Naya has always been like this relationship that green and red have with artifacts, right? Where Dockside is the best creature in the format right now, right? So green and red have an awkward relationship there, right? But then the other best green creature is Collector Roof, right? Which is directly antithetical to exactly what happens, right? So what you can now do is sort of play this deck that allows you to do Dockside loops, just pay. Well, they just work through Collector.
You just
Roof
need a second
you
card.
need to make more treasure.
Yeah, you just need to have your commander to make them work.
Exactly. So having a Dockside loop that works through Collector Roof is like actually kind of crazy, right? So like, for example, if you're looking at Emil Dockside, right, traditionally that is a 4 mana minimum for that loop, right? Whereas with Baylen out, it's 7. But yeah,
is it 7?
Yeah, because you don't need to double the extra, right? You just need to double the cost. You don't need to double how much extra it yields, right? Because you're still making infinite extra treasures from the ability, right?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm saying that it takes 8 treasures to activate a meal. So your Dockside Cowed it
takes 6 to activate a meal.
I thought a meal costs 4 to activate. It's 3?
3.
Oh, well then fuck me. Yeah, so 6. So
you're
7
it takes to net mana off a meal, which is 4.
So right. Okay. So at minimum you have to have 7 to go off with this. And then the other thing that I like about this is that it gives a very like straightforward outlet for those tokens where you don't need to try and cobble things together nearly as hard because you have this, this Haymaker, no pun intended, in the command zone that lets you draw your deck once you've made that infinite mana, and also lets you just make your dude fucking big. And it turns out a fucking big dude works a lot.
Sure. And the nice part is like you make 6 million treasures, right? Like a decent amount of them, 90 of them, right, are used to draw your deck, or I guess 180, right? And then the rest of them are just used as like actual mana sources, right, to actually be able to help play the rest of your deck, right? You're not limited in any sort of way post that point, right? So it's sort of nice and clean that way. And once again, like being able to be a Dockside deck that also plays Collector Roof is like kind of huge. Also, just like the other big problem with token decks in general that make a lot of sort of like incidental grind tokens, right, was the problem that they feed the hell out of Dockside, right? Like you make a bunch of foods or treasures or clues or anything like that, right? Like those are decks like Tivit, which is like, well, you better have your Blind Obedience or you just die, right? Whereas this deck can play Blind Obedience and Dauntless and all those things, but it also can play Oof and stuff like that and still just use them for mana or use them for resources, just not feed the ever-living hell out of a Dockside too.
Right. And it's not only that you get to play those Blind Obediences, but you get to play it's not that you just get to play Oof, you also get access to Stony Silence, to Null Rod. Yeah. Like you get 3 different ways, or I think 5 total different cards in your deck that can at minimum slow the Dockside plan down. And so I think that is like a huge upside to this. I think the biggest issue I have with this is ultimately your win cons and Naya are rough. You do have like Jiki lines and stuff like that, and there's obviously a lot of other things. And I think like the upside of this commander is it kind of simplifies a little bit of that because of the fact that you have the ability to draw your deck, which is a thing that not most Naya decks have not really been able to say in the past. You still kind of run into the issue of, you have very like all kind of combat focused sort of wins in Naya.
I don't know that I agree with that, because what you can often do is you can just go Emil Eternal Witness and then just lightning bolt loop people, or find an instant to put on the stack with a Blind Obedience. Like I think you can actually, that's one of the things I like about this deck a lot, is actually wins through One Ring, wins through like a lot of stuff, can win at instant speed. So like and the other part that like we haven't really touched upon is the fact that this works with a bunch of other random combos too, right? Like the Rosy Cotton and Broodscale combo works with this commander as well, right? Like there's like a bunch of really random like normally infinite token pass combos, right? That are no longer that. They're now infinite tokens, then draw deck, then infinite mana and win game, right? Like, so
Right.
I think this is, yeah, I don't know. I kind of have zero problem saying this is the best Naya commander ever printed for cEDH. Like it's and all the love to Rocco and stuff like that, but that's a deck that folds to a single Bowmaster's Ping nowadays, right? And like this deck doesn't.
Yeah.
Also, which is really nice about that part too.
Yeah, well, and it also notably doesn't, and not that like this is like a huge downside, because I mean we've seen what decks like so say that it's like not, but the whole opposition agent being able to shut down a lot of these Naya decks, and this just being like, okay, sure, whatever, like it is, I think, very, very strong.
Yeah, you have a solid grind plan, right? As long as you get like a token maker that's like, not you're not going to get away with like a Loyal Apprentice being like MVP, right? But like if you get a Smothering Tithe or a Rasta, which is another really weird
or
one.
I mean hell, like a Skrelv's Hive puts in work, right? Like I mean,
it's a little slow, but
it's slow, but it makes like a lot of consistent bodies and stuff like that. And you're in a deck that is just kind of like, whatever, you have a dockside, I'm playing like 15 null rods, figure it out,
right,
like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But yeah, no, this is a cool commander. It's exciting. It doesn't excite me in the way that I think it excites you, and I think that really comes down to the way that I am at heart a blue player who really, really, really dislikes not playing in that blue-white space. But no, this is really cool. What'd you say?
I said I like my creatures. Yeah,
you do. I like cool spells. But so next card on our list is pretty cool, and that's Flubs the Fool. Flubs is a 0/5 Frog Scout that costs Teamer to cast, and it has a few little static abilities on it. One is you may play an additional land on each of your turns, and the other is whenever you play a land or cast a spell, draw a card if you have no cards in hand. Otherwise, discard a card. So this is like, first of all, it's a great reference to the major minor arcana. I love that shit. But also this card from a gameplay standpoint does some interesting thing. It's kind of like that. What was that Teamer card that was from Ikoria that like a lot of Storm players really
Song
like?
of Creation.
Yeah. It has some of that Song of Creation vibes to it.
I shit you not. One of my best friends from growing up does not play a lot of cEDH. Messaged me as soon as this card was going, hey, I love the Song of Creation. Can you help me make this a thing?
Yeah.
Like it is the Song of Creation. I legitimately think this is one of the best card designs of all time. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's so good at scratching so many itches for players. And to be clear, I'm not saying one of the best cards of all time. I'm saying one of the best card designs, right? Like I think
it's very well designed. Yeah. It's very intentional, which I really like.
Right. Everything feels very intentional. Like it's silly. It's attractive to people who are playing from a casual basis. And it also is strong enough to appeal to people who are playing from a competitive basis as well. Right. Now, for any of those who are in the know, a lot of the Santa Fe crew led by Ken Bauman and a number of other brewers have created a no interaction Flubs list that is literally based on just fully it's like almost a religious experience, and I wish I was kidding when I said that, but like a lot, like I'm pretty sure the primer says when it's not your turn you stare blankly into the middle distance. It is
when it's not your turn, disassociate.
Yeah, basically, like it's bring a book or something, right? Like is the idea. Like it is a non-interactive, just full.
I'm here to play solitaire, guys.
Yeah, I'm here to play solitaire, and if you guys would like to let me do that, that's okay. And if not, I flubbed it.
That's
is exactly the way I've heard it described. I think it's fascinating and actually very fun to play in Goldfish. But there's a middle ground here with this deck where it is just genuinely a very good Teamer Storm deck, right? Obviously insane with breach lines. Makes Grinding Station Breach like pretty viable on top of LED Brain Freeze Breach, right? Manual Storm in general, like it's a great Song of Creation deck. It's just a deck where you have to be very particular with your card choices because it's very easy to fizzle. Also, it's one of those weird decks where if you have 2 cards in hand, depending on what those 2 cards are, you can just accidentally fizzle your own game plan, because you go to cast your spell and discard the last card in your hand and then don't trigger flubs, and if that card doesn't draw you a card, you're in trouble. Yeah, so 2 is death for flubs, but don't worry about it, it's fine. But it's great. It's great card design. I cannot wait to play this deck. I'm very excited for it. The version, it also is actually an outlet for a number of different combos too, right? So it's a little awkward with food chain at times, right? But the idea is that basically you get it to a point where you can use this as a food chain outlet, right? Because you exile flubs between spells so that you play your full deck. It's a whole thing, because you basically use flubs as an outlet to dig, right? And then Temur Sabertooth is actually a little bit easier for it as the same sort of thing, whereas you just bounce the spells to hand or put them on the battlefield, all that kind of stuff. But yes, it's a whole thing. But yes, flubs is an outlet for a number of those combos, and that's great.
Yeah, flubs is cool.
It's a very, very fun, very wild commander.
Sure. It really is. Next card on our list is maybe a little less in the wild side of things. It feels very by the books, very
you say that, but this art was spoiled at what event was it? It was one of the Magic Cons, and it
was Chicago.
Yeah, it was Chicago. Yes. And a creator whose name I will not dox currently went, "Why is he giving me fuck eyes?" very loudly in the crowd, and I can't unsee it. For anyone who hasn't seen this card, really give it a good view for sure.
Yeah, take an extra couple looks at it, because it definitely Glarb Calamity's Augur looks like he's wanting to give you a little extra something.
Invite you upstairs for sure.
Yeah, he definitely wants to have a cup of coffee with you after this. Glarb is a 2/4 Frog Wizard Noble that costs Soul Tie to cast. It has Death Touch, says you may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may play lands and cast spells with mana value 4 or greater from the top of your library. And you also has an activated ability where you can tap it and surveil too. So this is just this is the thing about this card, right? Is it's just generically good. I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah.
I could look at it and be that will win a game. That will be good. It's a Soul Tie commander with some built-in card advantage in the command zone. Seems pretty good.
Pretty good with counterbalance. Yeah.
But I don't know how I don't know how to get excited about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the issue with it.
You know what it is? Here's the one that gets me excited about this card. It's a really cool Bolas Citadel commander.
It is a very I think that's fair. Because you can play your lands.
Yeah.
Only one, but you can get rid of one and then you can surveil them away.
I just meant you surveil them away, yeah, because you can do that with Bolas Citadel too, silly goose.
Listen, I don't pay you to give me shit like this, okay?
My bad. I hate the templating of this card.
Yeah.
Speaking of card design, because it makes me think I can only play lands with mana value 4
or greater. While I was reading it, my brain did that for a second, where I was just lands with mana value 4 or greater. What?
But that doesn't work, right? Yeah.
There's one card in existence that I think qualifies. But yeah, no, I think this is, it feels a lot like honestly, I think if I were to be truly honest, I think this is the card that kind of put the value Tasigur decks that aren't doing the Neoform or Eldritch Evolution Tasigur into stuff. I feel like they have finally been put to bed because of this.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's just, you now have such a deep roster of alternatives that do that but better.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
I think
Vesh did that already, but yeah.
No, well, and I mean, this is what I mean. If that was not the end of it, because there were still people with Thrast Vesh who were yeah, but with this, and this just kind of very solidly, because as your Scepter outlet, right? You don't need to be mana positive to mill your deck out, right?
Right.
And that is not something that can be said about the Scepter Tasigur decks.
Mhm.
And so, like, I think that is a huge advantage to this. And I think Tasigur, value Tasigur is officially dead.
Tasigur has been hanging on by a thread that's like a combined thread of like people who just like the card and also people who wanted to do the Jeff Goldblum Secret Lair. Like that is 100% the only remaining Tasigur demographic for sure.
Yeah. The thing is like genuinely, I think the like Sultai Tasigur Neoform Eldritch Evolution deck is like a real thing. It's just not sexy. It's old. Like, it's hard to get excited about. And I think this is ultimately the issue with this card too, is it's like, it's just so generically good on its face, but not like in a 5-color or 4-color way. And it's kind of in this color part of the color pie that people really aren't vibing with right now. So it's really hard to get excited about this. I think like in 2016, people would have shit their pants over this card. But or 2017, people would have shit their pants over this card. Or hell, even 2020. But I think now the way Red has kind of come along, and I think the way that the meta has evolved, like a deck like this is good and viable and solid and probably deserves a place in the meta game, but it's hard to get excited about. And I think that's ultimately the big issue here with a card like this. Next card is the Infamous Cruelclaw. It is a 3/3 Weasel Mercenary that costs a generic, a black and a red, and has menace and says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card by discarding a card rather than paying its mana cost. So this is like backwards OG Atali. Like, it's like it inverse black. OG Atali, but it has black too, and you discard stuff. So it's like there's a lot of different elements coming together, but like that, I think at least being like, okay, it's a Rakdos commander, it gives it some legs, right? So this is cool, like just straightforwardly cool, right? Like, oh, I thought you were gonna jump in and add
my setup.
Yeah, that was your setup.
Cool. My setup was so this is cool.
So this is cool, right? Yeah.
Jesus Christ, Cal. It's all the kids are super hip. Cruelclaw. He's a cool guy.
This is super poggers, as the youth to say.
Is that right, chat? No. Okay, so Cruelclaw is good because you can crack a lot of things that make it kind of broken, right? So imp sealing or vamp tutoring or worse versions of this effect that you'll probably play because this commander, or scheming symmetry, or do I have to keep going? You do that, and then you put something big and stupid on top of your library, and then you win the game. It's sort of that easy. Ta-da! yeah. Like I know it really feels like I'm reinventing the wheel here, but like no, I mean it's a really efficient rate, and like if your opponents are about to untap with this card, maybe consider hold a mental misstep or other effect that can counter some sort of sorcery that would put
or fucking run some removal, for the love of God. Like try it. No, like right, creature removal.
Crazy here, Cal. Come on.
Play a path exile.
Yeah. It's just one of those cards that like if you think your opponents are gonna have a response, like you can't let them connect with this card, right? Because some really fun examples I can think of are like, okay, I scheming symmetry and give my opponent a very good card. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to hit that opponent. Oh no, I've cheated in an Emrakul. Now I'm going to take their turn. What was that card that you've put to the top of your library? Oh, that's so weird. That's why'd you get so greedy and tutor a good card? Weird. The other ones that I mean might tickle more people's fancy who aren't Emrakul build. Wow, I put this Peer into the Abyss on top of my library. Oh, so strange. Can I draw half of my deck? It can really be that easy. And also for those who aren't vibing with the Emrakul plan, that's okay. You can do the Peer thing and still treat this like a Rakdos Turbo Nas deck that just has really good upside, like just like a real high ceiling.
but let me also tell you this. That's boring. That's not cool in poggers. I talked to the Gen Z youth about it. I've been speaking with the youth of Facebook. It seems that on the Facebook, it's much cooler to do the Emrakul plan. But that I'm just here for the people. I'm just here, given the news. Okay. I need you to understand that I am referencing a thing I saw in the news yesterday because I was fucking watching CNN and
we have so many cards.
No, I know, but I need to explain this because this was the most it broke my brain. Like I did not recover well from this. I was watching CNN and they were talking about Kamala Harris and like something with Charlie XCX posting about her on TikTok. And they cut to their, and I quote, Gen Z reporter. And it is this woman in her 60s who's going, now correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm just like sitting there like, this is, guys, come on.
It can only go downhill from here.
Like, come on, guys. Like, you're telling me at CNN, you don't have a single person that is Gen Z in your fucking newsroom that can make an appearance.
One of the interns who you've been beating the shit out of for the past 5 hours.
Yeah, release them from their Adobe Premiere hell for like 15 seconds so that they can come on and explain a meme to Jake Tapper. Like, you don't need this old lady who's your fucking Gen Z correspondent.
Yeah.
You can just ask the people who work there. But
did you see also the drink I just attempted to open explode on me?
I did. Yeah. It was super beautiful. I loved it. This brought to you by Celsius. Next card on our lit.
The best part is the audience at home gets to really enjoy that if they're watching on YouTube. And then the podcast audience was just assaulted. And I'm so sorry.
Editors know.
No, for sure.
Make sure to amplify
there we go.
Specific part of Ian's waveform later. And editors in that. Anyway, so Zinnia?
I think it's just Zinnia, yeah.
Okay. Zinnia, Valley's Voice, is a 1/3 bird bard that costs Jeskai. And it says Zinnia's, I'm just going to say it gets at +X/+O, where X is the number of other creatures you control with base power 1. And creature spells you cast have offspring 2. Now, if you are unfamiliar with this mechanic, good for you. Yeah, because it is a brand new mechanic, fresh off the shelves of Wizards of the Coast's, Studio X or whatever the fuck it's called. You may pay. So what offspring is you may pay an additional 2 mana in this particular case as you cast a creature spell. If you do, when that creature enters, create a 1/1 token copy of it. So straightforwardly, 4 mana Dockside, super cool. 4 mana 2 Docksides off of 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I said the obvious one. What are some other cool creatures that you can give offspring in?
Oh, I haven't done that much research, Cal. Come on. I mean, it really is just like a very cheap Jeskai outlet in the command zone that can like turn on your Fierces and your Swats and your Mox Ambers pretty early on, doubles your Dockside counts. That makes like the looping with Dockside very, very easy. And
significantly easier,
yeah. You make infinite 1/1s and they're not like winning, right? So this is another one of those commanders. Also, like something that like is to not be underestimated with this commander is double Draniths, double Dauntless Dismantlers. Stuff like that is pretty real, right?
This is a poggers.
Yeah. Thank you, youth coordinator. I don't have. Oh wait. No, that's not how that works. Never mind. Don't worry about that part. There are synergies with this card. It's also, I immediately Googled Offspring songs to think about how many like good puns, and I was like, there's not enough good ones there.
How
like,
many deck names can I squeeze out of this? Right.
I really like I Got Low Self-Esteem. That's a good one. The Kids Aren't Alright's another just classic. But
yeah, I mean, this card is pretty solid. I think, again, this is another. I feel this way about a lot of the like not best cards in the set.
Yeah,
where I'm just like, yeah, that's good. I don't know how to get excited about this. You know what I mean?
That's fair. That's hella fair. Yeah,
that's like kind of my critique of a lot of these cards is the stuff that's really good is really good. And the stuff, everything else, I'm just kind of like, that's good. I don't know how to get excited about this. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think the Naya commander is really easy to wrap your arms around just because of how straightforwardly it fixes some of those internal synergy issues. But like, I think when I look at this, the immediate issue I see is like, what fucking good creatures outside of Dockside are you like double off, or, doing Offspring on that is like enough to build a game plan around. Right.
Well,
I think that's
the Satya thing too, right? Which is like you double your recruiters, right? Which is actually really big. You double your spell seekers, which is also really huge, right? Your Esper Sentinels just for value, right? Like,
but, so this is the other end of that though, right? Is like, how often do you have like that 5 mana and then some to set things up, right? Like, and I think that's kind of the issue is
when you
that I feel well, yes, but again, I feel like at that point you're already winning, and that's kind of my critique of it is I'm just kind of like, it feels super win more to me. It is good, but like I can't think of very many scenarios where I'm gonna be like, all right, fucking double Drannith. I can do that. That's cool that you can do that. I just can't think of very many scenarios where that is a good use of my 4 mana.
I think like the 5 mana double Imperial Recruiter get like Baron Dockside win game is like the easy one, right? Like that is because then you make infinite mana, you then bounce the Imperial Recruiter, play it again, find your outlet card, like GG's, right? Like that is one of those things that is like the deck is not just like. And I don't mean this as a criticism of your analysis. Like it's just not like dumb easy, right? Like it is just. I think the point of the deck is that like you have to invest a few things into it to get that value. It's very much like Satya is like almost the exact same deck, if I'm being honest.
Sure.
But like that also makes me want to look at like using the Offspring part the best. I also think not using combat is actually really huge here too, right? But I think like. The higher the mana value of the thing that you're offspringing to will also sort of yield some interesting parts of conversation for this deck. I think there's a lot there. I think it's just also not the easiest thing when you are initially looking at these cards. Also, like there's weird stuff with like cards that like when you cast them, they like would bounce something and then you make 2 of those and then they bounce the original. You know what I mean? Like Dreamstalker-esque stuff too, right?
Right.
So as I said, like it's weird, right? Like I'm pretty sure Dreamstalker, this and LED is a combo, unless because it costs 4 mana. So never mind. But you know what I mean? You get where I'm going for, right?
Right.
Like
and again, like I said, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just like, it's a thing that I can look at it and be like, that's good. Like I can see the value of it. I just, I'm having a hard time getting excited, and it's, I'm looking at this and I'm just like, I'm trying, and I see that and I'm just kind of like, man, the kids really aren't all right because I'm just not vibing. Next card here on our legendary creature list is Zoraline, Cosmos Collar. It is a 3/3 bat cleric that costs a generic, a white, and a black. Has flying and vigilance. Says whenever a bat you control attacks, you gain 1 life. And also says whenever Zoraline enters or attacks, you may pay white, black, and 2 life. When you do, return target non-land permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it.
Zoraline is my favorite Tim Burton movie.
It's my favorite subject of a night. It's my favorite part. It's my favorite subject of a 1975 song.
You're gonna have to help me with that one.
Doesn't the 1975 like make a Caroline? Or I guess would be Coraline. Never mind. I tried.
If you tried, and that's what counts.
If people out there know the song "Chocolate," I believe is the song that I'm thinking of. You at least know what I'm talking about. But
yeah.
Anyway, fuck Maddie Healy. Anyway, Zoraline, Cosmos Collar. This card is like really cool. My Swifties know what I'm talking about. Anyway, Zoraline. What are your thoughts on this card? I saw a lot of people getting like kind of excited about this. It has that templating that we are big fans of the enters or attacks. That Sun Titan templating. What are your thoughts on this card? Don't like it.
No, I don't like it at all. Yeah, I think this card is really weird. I had someone say it was like a new staple in Tim Necrom to my face, and I just sort of stared at them for 5 minutes. I don't get it.
My feeling on this is, why aren't you just, because the turn it comes down, it's basically just 2.
It's a 4-mana Savine's Wreck, right? Like when
the turn it comes down, it's 5 mana to do
5 mana,
yeah. So it's a mana cheaper to do a Sun Titan.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And I would argue Sun Titan. And it's much worse because everything comes back with a finality counter. So you can't loop shit. Like just fucking play Sun Titan.
Yeah. And to be clear, this is not the podcast where we're advocating to play Sun Titan. But if you want
but if you're gonna play this, just fucking play Sun Titan.
Play Sun Titan. Yeah, for sure. I don't get it.
I don't either, man. Like I was hoping you would show me the light with this card because I saw people going on about it. And I had the exact same reaction of you as I was like squinting my eyes and I was like, okay, but doesn't Sun Titan do that for free? And it's basically the same amount of mana.
Yep.
Okay. Sure.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, Ian and I are on the same page about this. Just play Sun Titan. Your new Tim Necrom staple. Next card on our list is Eluge, the Shoreless Sea. It is a elemental fish where its power and toughness are each equal to the number of islands you control, and it costs a generic and 3 blue to cast. Mm-hmm. It says whenever Eluge enters or attacks, put a flood counter on target land. It's an island in addition to its other types for as long as it has a flood counter on it. The first instant or sorcery spell you cast each turn costs blue or generic less to cast for each land you control with a flood counter on it. Fuck me, that's cool.
Right? Okay, so this is why I wanted to talk about this card, because it's just fucking cool card design,
right?
Like
I don't know that this is like a particularly good card, but it's cool. This reminds me of, do you remember the flood from the Doctor Who set where I was just
you and I were talking very aggressively about how we wanted to make that a thing, right?
Yeah, and how we were like, this is like very straightforwardly not a CEDH card, but it's cool and neat direction and could make for some interesting games. This is the same. Yeah. Anyway, so Ian, what are your thoughts? It's cool.
I do think like there's a world where you like sort of pre-bake in some flood counters, right? Because we're gonna Scryfall search this right now because I know flood counters are a thing already, right?
Right.
So flood counter. Okay. Currently, there are only a few mono blue cards with flood counters. Okay, that makes me a little sad. There's Aquitect's Will. There's Quicksilver Fountain. Okay, so this is literally a
And
deck
then
where you should
the flood
tutor
people, right?
Yeah,
Like
Quicksilver Fountain. But it is enters or attacks type thing, right? So like
Mhm.
just playing this out of the command zone still does the thing.
the
right?
templating
So
that we like on Inner's
Yep.
abilities, right?
Also, it's the first time I think we've ever seen is reduced by blue or generic,
Right.
which I think is a really interesting part of that, right?
I think that might make it. I think that's what makes it more intriguing to me, right? Because like,
yeah,
I think of like a card like Enter the Infinite suddenly is much easier to like parse that all together because now I don't have to get like a zillion blue pips in to get it. But you know, I mean, there's obvious and straightforward, you know, issues
also
that
like,
you're going to run into, but
yeah, but it says each turn too, right? So it's not like you have to tap out for this commander and it's useless, right? Like someone goes for it on this turn, you Swan Song, that counts, right? And then the next turn you brainstorm and like do a bunch of stuff, right? So like it sort of gets out of hand relatively quickly, right? The turn after that you can impulse and like all of that stuff, right? And then at some point you're paying like 2 mana for a Time Walk, right? And like that's the kind of stuff that I'm like, okay, when it starts to build up momentum, because obviously it's enters and attacks too, right? So like the more extra turns and stuff like that, or more extra combats, like not that you get a lot of extra combats in mono blue, right? But like the more extra turns you build up, the more you're reducing the spells, right? And it's not card advantage necessarily, right? So you need something that's also like allowing you to get through there, but it's also like creating this very large creature, right? So it's not exactly like your opponents are able to just block it for free, right? So you're just like taking turns and then putting pressure on their life total. And it's not doing as I said, it's not doing necessarily the put a lot of pressure on the card draw aspect, but it is reducing the cost of all of your spells on everyone's turns, right?
Ian,
so like,
we have found the deck for the Flood of Mars. Like if ever there was a deck for the Flood of Mars, this is it.
Yeah, the problem is Europe. No. Oh, if it's a land, it becomes an island. Oh, yeah. Okay, so if you never target your opponent's creatures, it's fine. If you target their creatures, though, then they get a Flood of Mars, and then that Flood of Mars attacks and then turns your commander into an island, right? So
and into a Flood of Mars.
Or into a Flood of Mars, sorry. Flood of Mars.
Words don't mean things anymore.
Yeah, words don't mean anything.
But yeah, no, I think this is really cool.
Flood. Yeah, no, I think it's really cool card design. And I think like you could easily make a high power to potentially fringe cEDH deck off of this. It's fascinating card design. I would love to see a deck based around it. And I would not be surprised if it, top 16's a tournament sometime. Like genuinely.
For sure. Next card on our list is Hugs Grisly Guardian. Hugs is a 5/5 Badger Warrior that costs X and 2 red and 2 green to cast. It has trample and says when Hugs Grisly Guardian enters, exile the top X cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool overall.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
90% of the time, probably worse than Natali, right? Like,
yeah,
but it probably will draw a lot less hate than Natali, right? And so, like, if you want like a mid-rangier Gruul deck and you don't want Minsk and Boo, you want a real creature in the command zone, and you don't want Atali because Atali goes 2 turbo, right? Like, that's kind of where the space Hugs is. Hugs also like has like sort of an innate landfall synergy that it's sort of expressing there too, right? It's like cute. Like the combos are all there, right? It's a food chain outlet. It's an outlet for Teamer Dockside or Cloudstone Dockside, and then also like as I mentioned, these like slight little upsides. Also, anything that cares about X spells is just generically good in the deck, right?
Right.
And there are like actually a decent amount of the like cards that sort of just instantly are like, oh, when you pay into X, double the X and all that stuff. So just big mana Gruul. I don't know that it's like the best thing that's ever happened, but if someone showed up with this in a tournament, I would not be surprised, and I would not be surprised to see it at least do decently. You know what I mean? Because there's a pre-made shell that exists in Gruul.
I think we've talked about this before, right? Where it's like, I don't love food chain. I like food chain more these days. But I think like a year ago, I was really low on food chain. I think now I'm much more like food chain, I think is fine. But I think there's like a base level floor of like how bad this can be or how good this can be. And it has like a decent floor, I think, which is nice for it. I do like to see Gruul getting some more of that like decent floor cards. The issue I think I have with it is the advantages you get from playing like Minsk and Boo or playing Atali, you just kind of fucking lose with this. And I think that is kind of my biggest issue with it.
Yep.
And
I agree.
Atali, I feel like I've been like the antichrist of this episode where I've just been hating on everything. But like, I think the issue this will be with this is, the advantage it has over Atali. I don't know that it's quite much better than the other option you have in Gruul that does the mid-range plan better. And then, vice versa, I think it has the, the inverse problem as well. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. But, again, like you said, you got to put respect on some of this stuff because I think that it's very solid. But
and this is to like one of those things where it's like the percentage points between this and maybe Minsk and Boo are like what feels to me pretty low, right? Like there's a technical ups and downside for each of the cards we've just mentioned, right?
Right.
And so like when I see someone shows up to a CEDH tournament with a deck like this, it's probably because they look at the cool new bear thing and they're going like, oh, that's cute, right? Like that's
right.
And that is, some people might disagree with that being a CEDH choice, but like when it comes to 0.01% of choices, also, there could be a competitive advantage to showing up with a deck that people don't understand and respect as much as an Atali or right. So like,
but and it's also a thing that just happens in 60 card formats too. Yeah. It's just people don't bitch about it the same way. Anyway, next card on our list here is Arthur Marigold Knight, which is a 4/5.
You got to refresh.
What is
a couple cards added?
Oh, you added some cards on me.
Like God 20 minutes ago.
Damn,
I thought you might have refreshed by then.
God damn it.
They added 2, I think.
Jesus. Okay.
I originally had Helga on here, but then I realized that she's just strictly worse than Hullen. So yeah. That one got
no, that's true. Next card on our list here is Alania Divergent Storm. Alania is a 3/5 otter wizard that costs 3 generic and a blue and a red. It says whenever you cast a spell, if it's the first instant spell, the first sorcery spell, or the first otter spell other than Alania you've cast this turn, you may have target opponent draw a card. If you do, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So it kind of has like gift, but like really
very specific,
very hyper specific gift. But this is interesting. This kind of reminds me of what's the mechanic? Display? Is that what I'm thinking of? Or the one where it's like if you cast a spell, you can have your opponent make a
demonstrate.
It kind of reminds me of that a little bit. What are your thoughts on this overall?
Yeah, it's so for me, it kind of reminds me of the Angelo deck, right, with the casualty, but like, this is a little bit more controlled, right? Like you don't need to invest into bodies and stuff like that. You just need your commander, right?
Right.
One thing is like kind of interesting is like this card doesn't count for itself, right? So the turn you cast it, you immediately have this ability unlocked, right? It does cost 5 mana, so that's not crazy, but like if you need to double Fierce Guardianship or whatever the turn it comes out, like that is just the thing you can do, right? And that's the thing is like it doesn't say, do this every time. It's a may ability, right?
Well, the thing is you can't double force or fierce the turn it comes down because it wouldn't be your first spell. The other than Alania.
No, it's the first instant spell.
Oh, okay. I see that. Okay. So, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm here now. That makes, that's interesting.
Yeah. So it can, that's the thing I like about it is like in one turn, yes, you do have to give some cards away, but you can double up an otter, like not relevant. You can double up an instant and you can double up a sorcery. Right. So that's the part that I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. Right. So like I can, put a time warp on the stack, let my opponent who's in the farthest worst position draw a card. Right. And then, if someone has a mind break trap, because, we're answering 2 spells somehow, right? I can then go, cool, double Fierce Guardianship, right? Like, so that's where I like this card.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I also like it because you can also just like my opponent is Thoracling, and I cast a Brainstorm and make them draw a card, which is the cute version of what it does, right? But like, you can just snipe.
You can
them
do that
at any point by casting any instant, which I find very funny.
Yeah.
But also, like, you can help your opponent's top deck tutor, right? Like, if there's like one of those situations where, oh no, I only have a Vamp tutor and they played a Grand Abolisher, I need to get a Force of Will on top, right? Like, that's something you can help with, right? Like, there's a lot of play with the card, you know what I mean? Like, it does a lot of work. And then once again, untapping on your turn and then like sending out like a double time walk is like, okay, cool, right? Like, rock and roll.
Right. Yeah, no, that's it looks like we are entering this into the Blue Moon category, probably of decks, maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm all about it, and I think it's like one of the more viable ones that has been.
Printed. No, I like being wrong. Is the thing I like, not that I'm like actively searching to be incorrect, but when I find out that I'm wrong, especially in a way like this, I love it. So let's move on though to Arthur Marigold Knight. It is a 4/5 mouse knight that costs 2 generic and Jeskai to cast. It has haste and says whenever Arthur and at least one other creature attack, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Return that creature to its owner's hand at the end of combat. So this has an immediate comparison to one Winota.
This is the thing that and this is not a criticism of you. This is every person I know under the sun has been comparing this card to Winota, and they're so fucking different.
Yeah, I was about to qualify that.
Yeah.
It is like Winota in that you get like that 6 trigger and you grab a creature and you put it onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. That is where the similarities end. I think
and red and white in the color identity.
What do you see in this card? What is it that gets you hot and bothered about this card?
Hate it.
It's callback, baby.
I know. So base level, Jeskai midrange with some creature cheating ability, right? Is sort of what we can perceive here, right?
Sure.
The stuff that is the broken stuff, right? Especially when you get Scroll Rack and Jace the Mind Sculptor involved. I know that's something that.
Did you say Squirrel Rack?
I said Scroll Rack, but I love that you've Bloomburrowed my words now.
I heard Squirrel Rack and was very much like, bro.
No, I'm not.
They did not print Squirrel Rack. Please tell me.
That would be hilarious though. But anyways, so you basically like can set up loops where you are putting the whatever creature that you want to be cheating in over and over again back into the top of your library, right? Obviously some fun examples are things like Blightsteel Colossus, right? Like you can just enlighten tutor in response to combat and then just be like, cool, I'm gonna literally murder this player. You can one of the things that I think is actually pretty good is this card called Metamai the Ageless, which is a Sphinx that says like you can take an extra turn when it deals combat damage, but it can't attack on extra turns. So basically what you do, if you have a Scroll Rack, you go like, cool, put Metamai on top of my library, bonk, hit an opponent, take an extra turn, move to that extra turn, go to combat again, put the thing back on top of my library, do it again, infinite turns, right? So there's a number of different cards that do similar stuff. And then, once again, you can just cheat in a Consecrated Sphinx for, well, I guess Consecrated Sphinx doesn't work, right? But like you can do big creature things, some of them with combat damage abilities, some of them just being like
things that specifically do like ETBs and combat damage, I think is what you want to be, rolling with in this.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you don't get a main phase with it, right? So it's not like you can do like Hullbreaker Horror stuff, right? But like, some sort of ETB or combat triggers are like very, very solid, right? Like, and even if it's just an Elish Norn, right? Like, here's my Elish Norn for combat. All your things die, all my stuff gets bigger. Yeah, like mini board wipe, and all my stuff get anthemed, and then pop back to the safe zone, right? Like that's it. So yeah, I think like there is a way to build it so efficiently that this is something that like consistently works turn after turn, right?
Yeah.
The rest of the deck's probably like a lot of like tempo-y, like almost like Winota, where you're playing like your Draniths and your Dauntless and stuff like that are like slowing things down. But you don't have to be creature type restricted too, which is another really big part. And one of the reasons that I keep getting frustrated by the Winota comparisons, because people are like, "Oh, cheat in your Rick Grimes," and I'm like, it's not. You can do anything. Why would you still just do?
Why did
Winota
you pick the like most outside of Winota average card?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I think the fact that it wants to play Jace the Mind Sculptor,
obviously it appeals.
We kind of gotta make this, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, fuck off. Next card on our list here is Dragonhawk Fate's Tempest. Dragonhawk is a 5/5 bird dragon that costs 3 generic and 2 red to cast, has flying, and says whenever Dragonhawk enters or attacks, exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 4 or greater. You may play those cards until your next end step. At the beginning of your next end step, Dragonhawk deals 2 damage to each opponent for each of those cards that are still exiled. So, Ian, you added this to our list. You know I don't vibe with mono red. What's going on here?
You don't really get a lot of card advantage in mono red, right? And this is like a red Titan, basically, but also has evasion, which is kind of nice.
A red Titan that doesn't suck.
A red Titan that doesn't suck, yeah, for sure. It's not Inferno Titan. Sorry for all the Inferno Titan stands out there. But like
eat shit.
Cloudstone loops with this will result in draw a majority of deck, move to end step, infinite damage. And by that I mean damage equal to deck.
How many cards in deck?
Right. And then, if there is a world where you can find synergistic creatures with power 4 or greater, which I don't think is the craziest thing in the world, right? Like you can play things like a Lodestone Golem to slow your opponents down, or you can play like some other larger creatures like that give you a bonus effect, right? Then suddenly this is like draw 2 per turn or draw 3 per turn, and then like that stuff kind of adds up really quickly, right? It's also like maybe good enough to like make you consider some weirdly static creatures like a Lupine prototype or whatever it might be, just to get like turn your 5 mana commander into like draw a couple cards every turn, which is like not. I don't think that's bad at all.
It's not the worst.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff lately with just like red commanders that are just sort of generically pretty okay, and then you sort of slap a Godo in the 99, and then you play.
Oops, I win.
Play a bunch of rituals, and then you do some Cloudstone stuff, and it's just like, oops, stumbled into a combo, right? Like you mentioned. So like that's been sort of a theme lately of just like low color red dot win. So I thought I'd bring it up at the very least. I don't know that like I'm saying it's the end all be all, but I think it's got enough stuff that like checks a good box that it's like, okay, sure. Yeah, for sure.
It's so funny because you can tell so much about me and my play style based on the mono colored decks that I get excited about, because it's like the mono blue one that's like,
you were like,
wow, like, whoa, that's cool. And this mono red one, just kind of like, okay. Yeah, you can do that.
Also, it's called Dragonhawk. Beautiful.
Next card on our list here is Mr. Foxglove. It is a 3/5 Fox Rogue that costs 2 generic, and Bant has lifelink and says whenever Mr. Foxglove attacks, draw cards equal to the number of cards in defending player's hand minus the number of cards in your hand. If you didn't draw cards this way, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. So anyway, Mr. Foxglove maybe will draw you some cards. What are your thoughts on this? Because I think it's pretty bad.
I think this one's actually kind of interesting. I think this will take good deck building. I think there's going to be games where you have this in your command zone and your opponent's doing the blue farm thing where they're like, no, give me cards, I can help. And then you go to combat and then you like swing at them and draw 12 cards because you're down to 3 and they have 15 cards in hand and everyone's been greedy, right? And then I think there's other times where you play a bunch of card advantage engines and you go to combat and you go like, all right, cool, swing a Foxglove. All right, no one having more cards, or do you?
If you didn't draw cards this way, so if you if the defending player has less cards than you.
Yeah, so you attack the person
or the same amount or less.
Right. So you intentionally attack a person with less cards than you, and then you go like, cool, here's insert big stupid thing.
Oh right? No, like, here's a Protean Hulk. How'd that get there?
Right. Yeah. Here's my next Blue Mage, and here's my Protean Hulk, here's my Hullbreaker Horror, right? Like there's you can basically just do Bant mid-range until you're like dummy hours. Bonk.
Oh
like,
shoot, how'd that get there?
Right. And then, sometimes you can do like stupid shit like, oh, here's my, show and tell in the 99 too as my backup commander, right? Like just like big dumb stuff, right? And
but don't play show and tell in Commander, please. I
think it's not the worst thing in the world, but yeah.
No, I can guarantee you it's the worst thing in the world, and I have horror stories about it. Please don't play show and tell in cEDH. You will regret it. Deeply. Don't do it. It's not me who was playing it. It was an opponent who played it. And
Cal, you never get upset when you play cards like this. It's always that someone else plays them.
No, that player was mad at themselves. I'll tell that story sometime on the show. Yeah. But
we don't have a very long set review. Yeah.
Yeah. We're already at the hour and 10-minute mark. So
yeah.
But yeah, slap down a creature and draw a bunch of cards. Not that bad. I generally speaking, I just think it's expensive. It doesn't have haste.
Yeah. No, for sure.
And I think the likelihood that the stars are going to align with this, I think to me feels pretty narrow. Now, I mean, when it does work, it's going to fucking work. Right.
Yeah.
But I think my main issue with it is I think that it, again, what you said is it's going to take some really clever deck building to make this like not just kill you, because you're going to accidentally just like be like, oh, here's a bunch of cards. Oh no, we died. And the inverse of that being like you play too greedy and then people just don't let you have your commander. And you have to walk a tight line with that deck.
Yeah. No, and
I think that's going to be hard to
like. I can see it being good given a very good player playing in a very intelligent way, right?
Yeah.
I think if you just sort of like kind of try and jam it into a board state that seems like a bad idea, then it's just going to get blown out, right? Like, so you have to. This is not one that is easy, I think, by any means.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see the value that you're saying in it though, but I think generally I think it's like kind of not quite Christmas landy, but it's like, getting close to the North Pole, if that makes sense, as far as like the stars needing to align. But if you want to prove me wrong, please do. I am all about it. Last of the commanders here is a card that, again, our good friend Phoenix has been yelling at us about, is Yrsa, Eater of All. This is a 6/6 elemental cat that costs 3 generic, a black and a green, has ward, sacrifice a food. So if you don't have a food, get fucked. Other creatures are food in addition to their other types and have the abilities that food have. You can sacrifice it, gain 3 life. You guys know the drill. Whenever a food is put into the graveyard or into a graveyard from the battlefield, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Yrsa, Eater of All. So again, there is a pretty semi-interesting deck that you can build around this.
Yeah.
That Phoenix built and like works and is better than you would initially think it is.
Yeah.
I still ultimately am like not that jazzed about playing Golgari in 2024. But like there's some cool shit that you could do with this. And I think the like making, stuff like all things are food. And I think this is my like hesitation with it, right? Is the fact that it just makes Dockside ridiculous, right? It's gonna feed the fuck
that's
out
the
of
worst part of the deck by far. Right. But the funny thing is though, that this is my favorite part about the deck, is that Collector Oof and Null Rod then become Cursed Totems and Null Rods.
Right.
Which I think is very
really
funny.
cool. Yeah.
It's really cool interaction. But specifically, I think there's a lot of really interesting cards with this one. I think like the fact that you turn all of your creatures into self-sacrifice outlets for 2 generic mana is pretty big. They do need haste, right? But like then you know with cards like the Academy Manufactor that gets out of hand insanely quickly.
This actually doesn't work with Academy Manufactor.
No, it doesn't. Oh, because you're not creating a token, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That's stupid.
Yep. There was confirmation of that on Twitter about the rules and how this interacts.
That's so depressing. But I also, as soon as you say that, that makes sense with
total
how I understand the rules to work. Yep. Damn. Okay. Well, there's other cool stuff you can do. It's sack outlets for all your creatures, and then also there's a ton of other stuff that just like when you stack a food, do this thing, make mana equal to food, right? Like it just, and you know you are correct in the fact that like there is a certain amount of dockside feeding. Yeah, absolutely. Praetor's Grasp is a card. I'll throw that one out there. Pretty fun interaction there with that one is when you play your commander and then dockside for X equals the amount of creatures plus artifacts and enchantments. There's stuff you can do. It's got cute interactions. You sort of like it's another sneeze new combo commander, right? Like yes, yeah, that's the vibe.
Yeah, and like I feel like in this episode of this, like the review of the commanders in the set, right, is I sound really like negative overall, and I don't like that. But like again, this is another commander that I think is like solid and generically pretty good, and I think that you can look at this and see the value in it pretty straightforwardly, and it's like not quite so generic that it's like Thrast Timna Crom, holy shit, what the fuck are you thinking? Generic good. And it's in that weird liminal space of like interesting card design and generically good. And I understand why people really like this stuff. It just doesn't get me like excited because it like doesn't hit one of the other one side or the other of the spectrum. And, I think this is a very good card. I think that this is going to be a deck that's going to probably show up more than I think I'm prepared for. If I'm being honest, I think this is probably going to be one of those decks that's going to be a rough out for some people. But overall, I think that like when you look at it, I think the ultimate issue comes down to you're in Golgari and you have Golgari issues, and it's kind of ultimately the crux of it, right? Well, yeah, that is it for the commanders of this set. We went through 15 different commanders, and we are going to be back next week with the non-commanders. So everything else. So thank you for watching, Ian. For the people at home that want to get coaching from you and want to improve their skills as a Magic the Gathering player, how can they do that?
Money burning right now. All right. Yeah. Hi, everybody. CEDH coach here full time on top of everything. Currently number 1 on the top deck leaderboard. If you would like to receive coaching, I've had a number of clients who've reached out to me having really great success for the past couple of weeks. I had a client who was really struggling for a while, and then immediately after our session said, hey, I did the things we talked about and I won my first local tournament. So love those experiences, love all that stuff. I'm doing all this very quickly because we have an entire second half of the set review to record. But that being said, if you're interested, ComedIanMTG@gmail.com, @ComedIanMTG on Twitter and Discord, or Comedian_MTG Comedian_MTG on Discord. Twitter and Instagram is @ComedianMTG. Apologies.
And all of that stuff is in the Mind Sculptors link tree as well.
Down below. Thank you all for watching this one. We'll see you in, for us, a mere moment of seconds. And for you,
it's going to be a couple minutes. I need to get it. Yeah. We'll see you next week. Stay sculpted.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.